Alexander Volkanovski 1 year ago on this day was the #1 pound for pound best fighter in the UFC. A 22 fight winning streak, absolutely dominating everybody in his division, looking like one of the best fighters the UFC had ever seen, taking out everybody, just cleaning the UFC up, making easy work of his division. 1 year later on this exact date, and Alexander Volkanovski has been brutally knocked out in his last 2 fights, and he has now been on a 2-fight losing streak. So guys, today I want to talk about what happened with Alexander Volkanovski, what happened with his last 2 fights, you know what I mean? Did Volk mismanage his career? How did he kind of mess up his career, guys? Let's get straight into it. Alexander Volkanovski, like I said, was on a 22 fight winning streak, one of the best of all time to do it. I still think that Volk is in his prime, but my point is, this guy was running through everybody in his division. He beat Brian Ortega in an epic fight. He knocked out Chan Sung Jung. He defeated Max Holloway, one of the featherweight goats, 3 times. Especially in that 3rd fight, he made a dominant statement, 50-45ing Max and leaving his face in a bloody pulp. And he took on Yair Rodriguez, Chad Mendes, Jose Aldo, all the really just great featherweight fighters. I think that Volk's resume is super underrated, but regardless, at UFC 284 on the 12th of February 2023, Alexander Volkanovski decided that it was time to move up to the lightweight division and take on the champion Islam Makhachev. I really thought that Islam was just going to be way too big, way too strong, and end up submitting Alexander Volkanovski. But not only did Volk show up to fight, this guy put on a great performance against the lightweight champion Islam Makhachev. The fight was scored 3 rounds to 2, Islam Makhachev in my honest opinion, but the point is, Volkanovski dropped this guy in the 5th round. He was landing some great shots on Islam Makhachev, stuffing most of the takedowns from Islam, which was the craziest part about it. I could not believe what I was seeing with my own eyes. You know, Volkanovski being a featherweight, being able to stuff the takedowns of Islam Makhachev. But regardless, the point is, he put up an amazing fight, and you know, a lot of people earned his respect. Regardless, Islam went on to win this fight, and Volkanovski, you know, being on a 22 fight winning streak, looking so dominant, was crushed by a loss. He had never been, you know, used to even losing, so this was kind of different for him. But regardless, we all know that Volkanovski wants to get back in that cage ASAP, so he makes the return at UFC 290, fights Yair Rodriguez, and absolutely destroys Yair Rodriguez in 3 rounds. I mean, he made some amazing adjustments in that fight, got that check right hook, and knocked out Yair Rodriguez. Basically picked him up like a fucking rugby player and looked like a world beater out there. And at this point, Volk is looking unstoppable, right? He's murking everybody in his division. He has no challenges left at 145. He's clearing out the division, and he knows that he has that challenge left with Islam Makhachev, right? He knows that he can get that possible rematch. So October 21, 2023, this was a changing date for Alexander Volkanovski. This was not a good date. 3 months later, at UFC 294, Charles Oliveira was scheduled to fight Islam Makhachev in an anticipated rematch. These guys have previously fought the year before at UFC 280. Charles Oliveira was the champion, and he lost his belt via submission to Islam Makhachev. So this was going to be a great rematch to watch. But regardless, 2 weeks before the fight, Charles Oliveira ends up getting a nasty cut on his face, which I'm not going to show on YouTube. But he was sparring some guy, and apparently in the last round of his shoot tape box sparring session, he got a nasty headbutt, a nasty head clash, and got a really brutal cut over his eyebrow. A lot of blood. It was a deep cut. Basically, he could not compete in 2 weeks time ahead of his fight with Islam Makhachev, so that left someone else having to fill in the role to fight Islam Makhachev. And who do you think it was, bro? It was my boy Alexander Volkanovski, right? But this was not a good thing. You know, I thought for a long time, I don't think this is a good idea for Alexander Volkanovski to take on Islam Makhachev on 12 days notice, basically 2 weeks notice. You know, this is going to be ridiculous. And Lucas Tracy, I will admit, you know, this guy called it perfectly. You know, he said Volk is making the worst decision of his career, taking this fight on short notice against one of the best in Islam Makhachev, one of the most highly skilled fighters. You should never be taking a fucking short notice fight against one of the best in the world. You need a full camp for that. But regardless, Volk had that, you know, no one's gonna stop me mentality, you know what I mean? Just like, I stood up and look at me now, you know what I'm saying? He's just very stubborn guy. Very stubborn guy, you know what I mean? And that's what you like to see in a UFC fighter. But regardless, Volk decides to take this fight. and nobody thinks it's a good idea. A lot of people think if there's one man that can beat Islam, it's going to be Alexander Volkanovski, and we watched the fight. But I'm gonna say this, I don't think Volkanovski had enough time to bulk up to be a lightweight against Islam Makhachev. I think it was ridiculous that he even took the fight on short notice at 12 days. You know what I mean? A lot of people, when they see that shit, you know, they're gonna respect you and be like, oh my god, dude, you're a warrior, you're a savage for taking this on 12 days notice. But the reality is, you have to think about the long-term shit. You know what I'm saying? You're going to lose to this guy on 12 days notice. Not only that, but you don't have, you know, it's just like, fuck, bro. And then he gets knocked out in his next fight against Ilia Topuria. I mean, this is rough, man. I feel like we've really created a new era within MMA. But yeah, Volkanovski loses the Islam Makhachev fight, gets brutally knocked out in the fight. Really didn't even have too much success. He looked tiny in that fight, like I said. And Islam just looked like he was dominating that fight. Regardless, though, Alexander Volkanovski, I think he needed to take some time off the Islam Makhachev knockout. But this guy being as stubborn as they are, you know, as crazy as they am, you know, as competitive as he is, like I said, wanting to come back early, he decides to fight Ilia Topuria not even 4 months later on the 17th of February 2024. And Ilia Topuria, man, a young, hungry, undefeated guy who's 14-0. I picked Ilia Topuria to beat Volk. You know, I don't mean to gloat like that, but my point is Volkanovski was taking this fight way too short, man. You know what I mean? This was stupid as hell from Volkanovski. He should have taken some time off. He really should have, you know, waited at least 6 to 8 months. You know what I mean? Especially getting brutally knocked out in a fight like that by Islam Makhachev. I just don't know who Volk's management team is. I think if I was in that corner, you know, as weird as it is, I'm telling Volk, like, hey, bro, you need to rest, bro. You genuinely need to rest. You know what I mean? You can come back and defend your belt. But defending his belt 4 months after getting knocked out by, you know, Islam Makhachev absolutely brutally is crazy to me. But regardless, we all know what happened. Ilia Topuria goes in there, absolutely staunches Alexander Volkanovski. And it was just very, very sad, bro. You know, I'm telling you right